In this episode, I'm going to be talking about how, maybe why you want to do that. I already made an episode on specifically why. But in this episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about how to get started. Once we've determined why you want to do this, which in the previous episode, I talked about the why, right? So you can look at that episode. Just go to the previous episode or go to the YouTube channel, look up the Decoy book playlist, and there's a section, an episode there, a video called Why Do You Want to Be a Decoy, where I talk about that in more depth. But why do you want to do this? Well, many reasons. Maybe you think it's really cool. Maybe you think it's a good way for you to contribute to your club. Or maybe just something that you've always been wanting to do. Whatever the reason might be, once you've arrived at that why, and it's a good enough why, it has to be good enough because, again, why else would you want to deal with the occasional aches and pains? Remember, it is a contact activity. Okay, it's not a passive thing where you every once in a while get to do it. It's one of these things that when you do, you are physically involved in the process. And being a physical activity, you are occasionally going to be sore. You're occasionally going to put yourself at risk of real bites. So why would you want to do that? You have to find a good reason for it. Now, how do we get started? There are only a few ways to get started. Okay, in the book, I talk about those different ways in a little bit of depth. In this episode, I'm going to be going over those reasons, over those hows, rather, over those ways to do it. Plus, I'm going to add a little bit more as I'm talking to you via the podcast, the video. So one of the ways to get started, once you determine, man, this is really something I really want to do, one of the ways to get started is through a dog training school. So I'll tell you about how I got started. When I first started doing this, when I started doing my research into this, my first thought wasn't, I want to be the guy that wants to take the bites. Yes, that was part of the appeal. But it wasn't like the sole thing. I didn't wake up one morning and decided I want to be the person taking the bites. It was definitely part of the appeal. But I know some people that is the main appeal, and everything else is sort of an afterthought, which there is nothing wrong with. But when I got started, this was part of the appeal. I wanted to train police dogs. I wanted to train dogs. But I really thought the appeal of training police dogs, training working dogs was very enticing. So I went to a dog training school. Now, I did my research. I talked to a bunch of different places. Now, at the time, this is several years ago. This is over 15 years ago. I was in my mid-20s. So the amount of dog training information, the amount of professionals out in the industry, and the amount of dog training schools, dog training seminars, the amount of all of that back then compared to what we have now is very different, very, very different. And even social media wasn't a big thing like it is now. Like I remember the main one was Facebook. But since Instagram, TikTok, and even YouTube and Facebook too, I know Facebook has evolved. But since the evolution of all of those platforms, the world has gotten smaller. The dog training world has gotten incredibly smaller. So there's a lot more information. It's a lot easier to do your research now. It's a lot easier to talk to a lot of people who've been to some of these other schools. I didn't have that, so I had to call the places. I had to watch a bunch of videos, kind of look at what I wanted to do. And I arrived at this conclusion that the best thing for me to do at the time was to go to a school in Louisiana. So the reason why that worked out the best for me was because at the time I was stationed in Louisiana. I was in the Coast Guard, and my last duty station was in Belle Chase. It was it is an air station. So I was stationed at the air station in Belle Chase, very close to New Orleans. And I was willing to travel. Okay, I did look into Tom Rose. I looked at apprenticeships. I looked at other places. But this one place seemed to have all the appeals. They trained police dogs. They trained protection dogs. They did dog training. There was decoy work. To top it off, it was very close. So the place I went to was US Canine. Now, at the moment, as of the recording of this video, I don't know what the status on US Canine is. I know that there have been some major changes there. So you might be able to see any program there. You might not. But at the time, again, it worked out for me. I went and it blew my mind. It really was an amazing experience for me. I learned so much. I learned so many lessons that carried me through my career years and years later. So when I started doing this, that was such an appeal. Training with the dogs, taking the bites was really cool. And at the time, mid-20s, you feel like you're invincible. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do the crazy crap. Stuff that now I have to sort of think about. I have to double check with my joints a little bit. I have to double check with some of the previous injuries that I've had that's still lingering a little bit. But back then, mid-20s, full of piss and vinegar. So I was down to do all of the fun, high-speed stuff. So to me, that was an incredible introduction because I was able to do this under the supervision of people that have been doing it for many years. Now, this wasn't sports protection work. This was personal protection work. This was police work. And it was a great experience. I learned a lot. Dog training in general, I learned a lot. Decoy work was one of those things that I definitely learned about a lot as well. But that is one way to do it. With dog training schools, if you are looking into decoy work, this is one way to do it. Now, you have to look at the dog training schools. Not every dog training school has an extensive curriculum on protection. They don't always have an extensive curriculum on the decoy work. As a matter of fact, it ends up just being a little afterthought. It turns out to be a little thing in the curriculum. They'll put this bullet point somewhere in the curriculum, but it's not typically the main thing. It's not one of the biggest things. It's not a big portion of the school. I went to other schools, other workshops throughout my career. Another big dog training school I went to was Starmark Academy, formerly known as Triple Crown. The decoy work there was decent. It wasn't a ton. It wasn't like a lot of decoy work, but it was enough exposure towards the end that it allowed me to get a different perspective on decoy work, more sports-oriented decoy work. And I know also that Starmark, or Triple Crown, Starmark has changed. Their curriculum has changed, has evolved. So the decoy work is not like a main thing. They're still doing it, and I know this. I know this personally because I still go to Starmark to do like a little bit of the decoy work with them. I still go and I bring some dogs and I have the students take some of the bites. So I know it is still a piece of the curriculum. So I go there for every class. I'll go there once towards the end of their program. So whoever stays, whoever's staying there for the last 4 weeks, I'll go there towards that portion of the program to go over protection work, to go over decoy work. So we'll do some drills, and I'll have them take bites, whoever wants to do it. But again, it's a part of their curriculum. It's not a big portion of their curriculum. So if you are you want to get into protection work, you want to go into decoy work, one of the best things to do is call these places, the transparency on all of these schools is actually pretty good. If you call them and you tell them anywhere, it doesn't have to be Star Mark. It could be Star Mark, but anywhere. You want to call them and ask them, how much emphasis do you put, or how much time do you spend on protection work? You can ask them that. They can tell you, well, a program is divided into 3 portions: basic, intermediate, and advanced. And so the decoy work and the protection work is towards the end, towards the advanced portion of the curriculum. Then you can ask them, okay, how much time do we spend on that? If it sounds to you like they're just touching on it, and the main reason you are thinking about going there in the first place is to expand your knowledge of decoy work, of protection work, then maybe it's not the best place. If your primary goal is protection work, is if as you're talking to them, they indicate that it is not the main thing, it's not a big thing, then you just call somebody else. And then you do until you find the appropriate answer. So when I went to the first dog training school, when I asked about that, they did indicate that it was one of the main things. As a matter of fact, when I went to US Canine, it was something that was done every day. So just give you a brief idea of what the schedule was like, what the routine was like. For 3 months, and I did 3 months, and I stuck around for another 3 months afterwards. But for 3 months, essentially the curriculum at US Canine was every morning we did tracking, we did protection, we did obedience, we did scent detection. And then in the afternoon, we do the same thing. We'd be up laying tracks like at 6 in the morning. And we run the dogs through all of the various tracks that we did. And we do scent detection, run all the dogs in rotation through all the scent detection exercises. And then we will do some protection work. So it's something we did on a mostly daily, if not daily basis. So it was a big portion of the curriculum. Whereas at Star Mark, it was a great program. I enjoyed it when I went. It was great. It was so detailed and so much information, but it wasn't a strong protection program when I went there. It was there, it was decent, but it wasn't like to the extent that it was at US Canine. So this is where you asking these questions, getting to know the curriculum, and even better, if you get to talk to a handful of people that have gone to these schools, and you can ask them, hey, I really want to do decoy work. I know you went to that school. What was your experience? Like, did you do a lot of protection work? And if they tell you, no, we really didn't do a whole lot, well, then now you know. Now you get your answer. And I say always talk to a handful of people, because if you only talk to one person and they tell you, yeah, I went to that school, and that's the only person you rely on, well, you have no idea what that person's experience was like. You have no idea whether this person was a go-getter. You don't know if this person was diligent. You don't know if this person was squared away. This person might have been lousy, barely making it through, or maybe not even have made it through. And now you're asking the opinion of a person that went to that school that is possibly disgruntled. So always good practice to go to talk to a few different people if you're going to inquire about one particular school. That way you can filter that out in case you run into that. But that's one way to do it, is going through a school or through some sort of program. The other way to do it is through, this is a much better way, in my opinion. Now, I have nothing against dog training schools. Obviously, I've gone to dog training schools, so I love the concept of dog training schools. I made a few videos on that topic that you can find, again, on the podcast or on YouTube, on the YouTube channel. The other way to do it is through a club. When I say a club, I mean a protection club. So if you go to a protection club, we're talking about protection sports training typically. These are the people, protection sports enthusiasts, protection sports handlers are the ones that form their clubs. protection dog training, people with protection dogs, they normally do not form clubs. Okay. Protection sports people are the ones that get really organized about it because we compete regularly. We have to form a support system, or we have to go to a support system, a place where people understand that sport. So there's a lot of protection work, a lot of protection training, and a lot of deco work that is being done, that is taking place at these clubs. So you want to learn about deco work, you want to do some deco work, this is one of the ways that you can do it. You can do your research too. There's no getting around research, okay? And the research should include more than, does anybody know of a club near my zip code? Your research should include contacting these places, asking them if you can come visit and watch, see how they're doing it, see if it feels right to you. There are a couple of things to keep in mind about protection clubs. One, that it's primarily sports oriented. So if you go to a ring club, you're probably going to see, I say probably, there's an incredibly high probability that you're only going to see ring sports, so ring sport decoy, whether that be French ring or Mondial ring. So the techniques in ring sport decoy work are going to be different than the techniques in another sport, okay? If you go to a PSA club, that's what I do. I do PSA, so I have a protection club, a PSA club. If you go to a PSA club, the work that is going to be done there is going to be PSA. It's a different sport. So the deco work is going to be specific to PSA. They don't transfer. If you go to a Schutzhund club or an IGP club, I mean, if you can even get them to talk to you, I'll be surprised. They're known for not talking to anybody they don't know. I know this from personal first-hand experience. A lot of people know that. You contact a Schutzhund club, it's like you have to know certain people, otherwise they won't even talk to you. Not always the case with everybody, so I don't want to represent everybody, but it's known, right? It's just one of those things. If you find an IGP club, a Schutzhund club, and they don't get back to you right away, you might have to hound them. You might have to message and call and message and call and message, because they don't get back right away usually. Some of the other clubs might not either, but in my experience, some of the other clubs are a little bit more open to talking to you. The ring sport people are a little bit open. The PSA clubs are usually incredibly open. So obviously there are some exceptions. Okay, there's always exceptions. I'm just talking about generalizations here. All right, you want to come to my place where I do my club in my backyard, where I have my family, and I do a background check on you, and you have a violent crime in your history. I'm not gonna welcome you into my club. I'm sorry. I'm sure you're a good guy, good gal, but you're not coming to my home where I have my little kids or any of that. Now, an entirely different topic. I personally do that. You come to my club, I'm going to be very, very specific about you. I don't care about the little things. I don't care about the traffic violations. I don't care about the weed. None of that stuff. But I run a background check on you. Yes, I am. I know this episode is turning into an entirely different direction right now. But when, at some point, I was running my club in my backyard. A lot of places do that. Some places have their clubs at a park. Well, if I meet at a park, I don't care. I don't care who goes. It's a public park. Anybody can go there. If I do my protection club in my backyard, in my front yard, where I have my kids, yeah, I'm going to do a background check. That's just me. Most of the time, that background check clears, no problem. Little things, like I said, I don't care. Look, nobody's perfect. I see violent crime in your past, you're not coming to my club. Not because I have anything against you. I just don't want to run that risk. And so I'm not gonna let that happen. But anyways, now let's get back on topic. Okay. If you want to dive deeper into this, by the way, let me know. I'll be happy to expand on another episode. But I just want to stay on point. Anyhow, aside from that, PSA clubs are generally very, very open. They're very open. They get back to you. They'll talk to you, and they'll welcome you to watch. I do that, like, again, 99.9% of the time, with some exceptions. And I don't have a problem with you coming and watching, okay? You want to come watch, you show interest that you want to do some deco work, we'll talk about that, and we'll set you up for success. Here, I'm talking on behalf of my club. And you have to realize people run groups different to pay. So if you do want to go to these clubs, you might see some things that are not very palatable. So you have to then, there's a few factors that go into it. One, they're protection sports groups. So you're doing protection training. Two, there's specific sports groups. So an IGP club is going to be an entirely different type of protection work than a ring club, which is going to be an entirely different type of protection work than a PSA club. There's going to be a lot of similarities, but they're going to be different. How does this affect you? Well, it affects you because you might not know what kind of deco work you want to do. Or maybe you do. Maybe you think, I just want to do personal protection. I don't want to do sports. Well, that's fine, and that's great. But even a sports protection, a sports club, you can learn some things out of it. Okay, maybe 100% of it is not applicable to what you ultimately want to do. But if you don't even know what you're doing, if you don't know if you're new to it, technically you don't know what you want to do. Okay, you think maybe you want to get into deco work, but there are so many possibilities. Even in protection work, right? Everybody thinks they got the magic sauce. Everybody thinks they got the recipe. Well, they're like, this is the best way to do it. And even in sports clubs, you run into the same thing, right? People think that they have the best way to do it. So you want to look into different places. You want to, the research never stops. You want to keep learning, keep asking, keep being exposed to different training styles. But going through a protection sport club is a very easy, low resistance way of getting into it, not to mention a lot more affordable than going to a school. Now, what the protection sport club is not going to do is they're not going to teach you dog training. Yeah, you're going to pick up some things for sure, but they're not actually spending time with you, making sure that you understand the operant conditioning, classical conditioning. They're not going to do that, whereas a school does that. A school will do that. They're very thorough because you are a student. So as a student, they want to make sure that you're successful. To do that, they have to spend a lot of time with you, or they should spend a lot of time with you. To do that, they're invested in you. Whereas in the protection sport club, they are invested in you because they don't want you to fail. They don't want you to catch the dogs in a manner that is not safe. But again, it's not going to be as thorough as it would be at school. So that's another way to get deco work, and in my opinion, it's one of the best ways because it's low resistance. Okay, it's very low resistance. You don't have to get a loan for it. You're not going to have to pay a tremendous amount of money, and most of these places won't even charge you anything just to come watch, as long as you don't act like a prick. You don't do any stupid stuff. You don't bring any drama. You'll probably be fine. You're probably not going to get kicked out, and it's a good way for you to get that deco work experience. A lot of people that have gotten into deco work have done it that route. They'll go to a club, know nothing about deco work, and then they'll show the commitment. They show that they want to be there, and the club will kind of almost adopt them into the group and go, yes, all right, we're going to show you how to do this, because if we help you, you can in turn help us as well. So in my opinion, again, one of the best ways to do it is the club route. You have to be patient, though. Just because you come in and go, hey, I want to be a decoy, and I heard that going the club route is really cool, really easy. That doesn't mean that day one they're gonna have you catch dogs. Just like I mentioned in a previous episode, you have to show commitment. You have to show that you want to be there. You have to show the discipline that you're willing to be there and willing to learn. And as you do that, you'll get opportunities to decoy. That opportunity might come towards the end of the first lesson, or it might come days later, it might come sessions later, it might come weeks later, and in some instances, it might even come months later. Okay? But still, it is the lowest resistance way to do it. The other way to do it is through the agency route. So I have that in the book as well. So the agency route is when you actually work for an agency, whether you are in the military working dog. Now, military working dog, I'm just going to tell you, you work with working dogs, with contract or military working dogs, you're not going to be doing a ton of decoy work. You'll do just enough to maintain some of the training. But until you go through the ranks, until you're actually getting a lot of hands-on exposure with dogs, they're not going to have you do a ton of decoy work. Yes, they'll tell you, put on the sleeve while I send the dog. But like we talked about in a previous episode, that's more of a prop. You're not really developing anything. So even though the military does have their own developing programs and they do have their trainers that do the decoy work, it's not like that is the main thing you're going to be doing. You're going to be doing a lot of other things. Remember, you're going to be in the military, so you're going to have collateral duties. You're going to have to go through boot camp. You're going to go to a duty station. You're going to have to learn about your specialty. And so there's a lot more going on. Your day is going to be filled with a lot more things than just the occasional decoy work, bite work here and there. Same thing with a police unit. So if you want to do that, you could do that. I've known people through my career that they wanted to work with police dogs. So the first thing they thought, well, that's logical, right? I want to work with police dogs. I want to be a police dog handler. So the logical thing is to be a police officer. Well, it's a very high resistance way of doing it. It's not like you're just gonna show up to the recruiting place, go, hey, I want to be a canine handler, a police dog handler. Where's my dog? When do I start? You're gonna have to go through the other stuff that you have to do as a police officer. You're gonna have to go to the academy. You're gonna have to be a street cop. You're gonna be doing a bunch of other stuff. And then on top of that, in a lot of agencies, when that opportunity does show up, you are probably not going to be in the position to be the first pick, because there is promotions, right? There's a bunch of other stuff that goes into it. I've known a lot of people that wanted to do either dog handling or protection work. They thought that going the military working dog route, going to the police route, was going to be an easy way, and it sounds logical. Why wouldn't it be logical to do that if you want to work with military working dogs or if you want to work with police dogs? But it doesn't work that way. And then some of these people that I've known that have done that, well, then they tell me, yeah, yeah, and it ended up not happening for a very long time, or it ended up not happening at all. So high resistance way of doing it. Now, if you are already a cop, right? If you already have your time in there, if you're already in one of the branches that does have the working dogs, some branches are obviously going to be a little bit easier to get into that. Some specialties in each branch are going to be a little bit easier to get into that. Some are not. And some you will never, some specialties in some of these branches, you're never going to touch a dog. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much you want to do it. Never going to happen, because your specialty is not congruent with the application of the working dog. So the agency route is another way to do it, but in my opinion, okay, this is probably one of the more difficult ways of doing it, just because of all the other stuff that you have to do to maybe get an opportunity at doing it. So those are the different ways. Really, not many other ways. Now, I'm sure there are other ways. Like your uncle has a working dog company, and that's maybe how you start. Yeah, I'm sure there are other ways, but the main ways are going to be the ones I went over: the club route, the dog training school route, or the agency route. If you like this video, let me know. If you have any questions, anything you want me to dive deeper into, let me know. Any topics you want me to cover, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to expand on it. See you guys on the next episode.